Good morning. It's me. We're reading Damien again today. I can't scroll. Yes, I can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, wait, no. Hold on. You can tell I literally just opened this like today. Well, yes, today, but like within the past 5 minutes. Bedtime story time. Yeah. Hi everyone. Hi Eno. Hi Earl King Heathcliff if you're still here. We can't. It's not jumping to the thing. Hold on. Hold on a second. Where are we? It's been a hot minute since we've done a Damien reading. Not gonna lie. Where are we? Chapter 3, The Thief on the Cross. Oh. Why won't it? Hi, Key. It's not loading. Which I think is funny. There we go. We did it. Chapter 6. That was that part when Damien said, "Sinclair, I am gay," and then Damien all over the place. So very true. I remember that part of the book. Yeah, that part of the book is gonna happen today as well. Isn't that so much fun? Isn't that great? Don't we love Damien by Herman Hesse? Also, hello, yes, or creator of yes. I still don't know if I should just say the whole thing or shorten it down, but regardless, I'm gonna say the whole thing. Yeah. I don't really know how to like transition into the thing, but hey, it is what it is, right? Yeah, today, not to turn this into a just chatting stream, but today I couldn't sleep, so I got myself a matcha latte again. Hello, Dino, welcome in. God, Irium has me greeting everybody now. Nobody is safe, nobody is discreet under my watchful eye anymore. Yeah, we're reading chapter 6 today. We have 2 more chapters after this, which is like 2 more weeks of Damien reading, which I think is crazy. So, yeah. I'm gonna try to read slower than normal, and see how that works. It probably won't work out at all. Let's see, how many pages do we have? 139 all the way to... actually, let's not look at the page count, because then I'm gonna get... my brain's gonna get all bro about it. If I wanted to be discreet, I would have just not said anything like I used to. True. Oh my gosh. Character development? Is this a sign? Is bro breaking out of their shell? This is just like Sinclair. Oh my god, no way. Yeah, we are full of references today. Anyways, chapter 6. Jacob wrestles with God. I cannot relate in brief all that I learned from the singular musician Pistorius about Abraxas. The most important result of his teaching was that I made a further step forward on the road to self-realization. I was then about 18 years old. I was a young man rather out of the ordinary, precocious in 100 things, and 100 other things backward and helpless. When from time to time I used to compare myself with others, I was often proud and conceited, but just as frequently I felt depressed and humiliated. I had often looked upon myself as a genius, often as half mad. I could not share the pleasures in life of the fellows my age, and often I heaped reproaches on myself and was consumed with cares, thinking I was hopelessly cut off from them and that life was closed to me. Pistorius, himself full-grown and eccentric, taught me to preserve my courage and my self-esteem. In constantly finding some value in my words, in my dreams, in the play of my imagination and in my ideas, and taking them seriously and discussing them, he set me an example. "You have told me," he said, "that you like music because it is not moral. Well, all right, but you should be no moralist yourself. You should not compare yourself with others. If nature had created you to be a bat, you ought not to want to make yourself into an ostrich. You often consider yourself a singular. You reproach yourself with going ways different from most people. You must get out of that habit. Look in the fire, look at the clouds, and as soon as you have presentiments, and the voices of your soul begin to speak, yield to them, and don't first ask what the opinion of your master or your father would be, or whether they would be pleasing to some god or other. One spoils oneself that way. In doing that, one treads the common road, becomes a fossil. Sinclair, my dear fellow, the name of our god is Abraxas. He is God and he is Satan. He has the light and the dark world in him. Abraxas has no objection to urge against any of your ideas or against any of your dreams. Never forget that. but he deserts you if you ever become blameless and normal. He deserts you and seeks out another pot in order to cook his ideas therein. Of all my dreams, that dark love dream occurred most frequently. Often have I dreamed of it. Often I stepped under the crust with the burden on it into our house, and wished to draw my mother to me, but instead of her, I found I was embracing the tall, manly, half-motherly woman, of whom I was afraid, and yet to whom I was drawn by a most ardent desire. And I could never relate this dream to my friend. I kept it back, although I had opened my heart to him on everything else. It was my secret, my retreat, my refuge. When I was depressed, I used to beg Pistorius to play me the Pascalgia of old Buxtehude. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Passacaglia of old Buxtehude. Okay, there we go. I don't know if I said that right at all still. I sat in the dark church in the evening, engrossed in the singularly intimate music, which seemed to be hearkening to itself, as if entirely self-absorbed. Each time it did me good and made me more ready to follow the promptings of my inward self. Sometimes we stayed a while in the church after the strains of the organ had died away. We sat and watched the feeble light shine through the high lancet window. The light seemed to lose itself in the body of the church. It sounds funny, said Pistorius, that I once did theology and almost became a parson, but it was only an error in form that I committed. To be a priest, that is my vocation and my aim. Only I was too easily satisfied, and gave myself to the service of Jehovah before ever I knew Abraxas. Ah, every religion is wonderful. Religion is soul. It is all one whether you take communion as a Christian or whether you make a pilgrimage to Mecca. Then really you might have been a clergyman, I suggested. No, Sinclair, no. I should have had to have lied in that case. Our religion is so practiced as if it were none. It is carried on as if it were a work of the understanding. A Catholic I could well be, if need were, but a Protestant clergyman, no. There are two kinds of genuine believers, I know such, who hold gladly to the literal interpretation. I could not say to them for me that Christ was not a mere person, but a hero, a myth, a wonderful shadow picture in which mankind sees itself painted on the wall of eternity. And what should I find to say to the other sort, those who go to church and hear wise words, to fulfill a duty, in order to leave nothing undone, etc.? Convert them, you think? Perhaps? But that is not at all my idea. The priest does not wish to convert. He only wants to live among the believers, among those of his own kind, so that through him they may find expression for that feeling out of which we make our gods. Oops. He broke off. Then he continued. Our new faith, for which we have chosen the name of Abraxas, is beautiful, my friend. It is the best we have, but it is still a nestling. Its wings have not yet grown. Alas, a lowly religion, that is not yet the true one. It must become an affair of many. It must have cult and orgy, feasts and mysteries. He was sunk in reflection. Can one not celebrate mysteries alone, or in a very small circle? I asked hesitatingly. Yes, one can, he nodded. I have been celebrating them for a long time past. I have celebrated cults for which I should have been imprisoned for years in a convict station, if they had been found out, but I know it is not the right thing. He suddenly clapped me on the shoulder, making me jump. Young friend, he said impressively, you also have mysteries. I know that you must have dreams of which you make no mention to me. I don't wish to know them, but I tell you, live them, these dreams. Play your distant part, build altars to them. It is not yet the perfect religion, but it is a way. Whether you and I and a few other people will one day renew the world remains to be seen. But we must renew it daily within us, otherwise we are of no account. Think over it. You are 18, Sinclair. You don't go with loose women. You must have love dreams, desires. Perhaps they are such that you are frightened by them. They are the best you have, believe me. I have lost a great deal by doing violence to these love dreams when I was your age. One should not do that. When one knows of Abraxas, one should do that no more. We should fear nothing. We should hold nothing forbidden which the soul in us desires. Frightened, I objected. But you can't do everything which comes into your mind. You can't murder a man because you can't tolerate him. He pressed closer to me. There are cases where you can, only, generally, it's a mistake. I don't mean that you can simply do everything which comes into your mind. No, but you shouldn't do injury to those ideas in which there is sense. You shouldn't banish them from your mind or moralize about them. Instead of getting oneself crucified or crucifying others, one can solemnly drink wine out of a cup, thanking the while in the mystery of sacrifice. One can, without such actions, treat one's impulses and one's so-called temptations with esteem and love. Then you discover their meaning, and they all have meaning. Next time the idea takes you to do something really mad and sinful, Sinclair, if you would like to murder someone or to do something dreadfully obscene, then think a moment that it is Abraxas who is indulging in a play of fancy. The man you would like to kill is never really Mr. So-and-so. That is really only disguise. When we hate a man, we hate in him something which resides in us ourselves. What is not in us does not move us. Never had Pistorius said anything to me which went home so deeply as this. I could not reply. But what moved me most was singularly and most powerfully was that Pistorius in this conversation had struck the same note as Damien, whose words I had carried in my mind for years and years past. They knew nothing of one another, and both said to me the same thing. The things we see, said Pistorius softly, are the same things which are in us. There is no reality except that which we have in ourselves. For that reason, most people live so unreally, because they hold the impressions of the outside world for real, and their own world in themselves never enters into their consideration. You can be happy like that. But if once you know of the other, then you no longer have the choice but to go the way most people go, Sinclair. The road for most people is easy. Ours is hard. Let us go. A few days later, after I had on 2 occasions waited for him in vain, I met him late one evening in the street. He came stumbling round a corner, blown along by the cold night wind. He was very drunk. I did not like to call him. He passed by without noticing me, staring in front of him with strange, glowing eyes, as though he were moving in obedience to a dark call from the unknown. I followed him down one street. He drifted along as if drawn by an invisible wire, with the swaying gait of a fanatic, or like a ghost. Sadly, I went home, to the unsolved problems of my dreams. Thus he renews the world in himself, I thought, and felt instantly that my thought was base and moral. What did I know of his dreams? Perhaps in his intoxication he was going a surer way than in my anxiety. In the intervals between lessons, it struck me once or twice that a boy who had never before attracted my notice was hovering about my proximity. It was a little weak-looking, slim youngster with reddish-blonde, thin hair, who had something peculiar in his look and behavior. One evening, as I came home, he was on the watch for me in the street. He let me pass by, then walked behind me, and remained standing in front of the door of the house. "Can I do anything for you?" I asked. "I only want to speak to you," he said timidly. "Be good enough to come a few steps with me." I followed him, observing that he was deeply excited and full of expectation. His hands trembled. "Are you a spiritualist?" he asked quite suddenly. "No, knauer," I said, laughing. "Not a bit. How did you get hold of that idea? But you are a theosophist." "No, again." "Oh, please don't be so reserved. I feel with absolute certitude there is something singular about you. It is in your eyes. I thought it certain you communed with spirits. I am not asking out of curiosity, Sinclair, no. I am myself a seeker, you know, and I am so lonely. Tell me then," I encouraged him. "I know absolutely nothing of ghosts. I live in my dreams. That is what you have felt about me. Other people live in dreams as well, but not in their own. That is the difference." "Yes, perhaps so," he whispered, "only it depends on the sort of dreams you live in. Have you ever heard of white magic?" I had to admit my ignorance. "It's when you learn to get the mastery over yourself. You can be immortal and have magical powers as well. Have you never practiced such experiments?" On my evening curiosity with regard to these practices, he was mysteriously silent, but when I turned to go, he burst out in explanation. "For example, when I go to sleep or when I wish to concentrate my thoughts, I do such exercises. I think of something or other, a word for instance, or a name, or a geometrical figure. Then I think it into myself, as strongly as I can. I try to get it into my head until I feel it is there. Then I think it in my neck, and so on, until I am quite full of it. Then my thoughts are concentrated and nothing more can disturb my repose." I understood to a certain degree what he meant, yet I felt he had something else in his mind. He was oddly excited and hasty. I tried to make the question easy for him, and he soon gave me an indication of what immediately concerned him. "You are also continent?" he asked me anxiously. "What do you mean by that? Do you mean it from the sex point of view?" Yes. I have been continent for 2 years, since I knew of what I have told you. Before that I practiced advice, you know what? You have never been with a woman then?" "No," I said. "I haven't found the right one." "But if you should find her, the one you consider the right one, then would you sleep with her?" "Yes, naturally, if she had nothing against it," I said with some scorn. "Oh, then you are on a false track. One can only perfect one's inner forces if one remains entirely continent. I have done it for 2 whole years. 2 years and a little more than a month. It's so hard. Often I can scarcely hold out any longer. Listen, knauer, I don't believe that continency, oh my god, is so terribly important." "I know," he parried. "They all say that. But I did not expect to hear it from you. Whoever will go the higher spiritual way must remain pure unconditionally." "Well then, do so. But I don't understand why one man should be purer than another, because he represses his sex instincts. Or can you switch off all sexual matters from your thoughts and dreams?" He looked despairingly at me. "No, that's just it. God, and yet it must be. At night I have dreams which I couldn't relate even to myself. Terrible dreams, terrible." I recollected what Pistorius had said to me. But however much I felt his words to be right, I could not pass them on. I could not give advice which did not result from my own experience, advice the observance of which I did not yet feel myself equal to. I was silent and felt humiliated that someone should come to me for counsel when I had none to give. "I have tried everything," wailed knauer beside me. "I have done all that a man can do, with cold water, with snow, with gymnastic exercises and running, but all that doesn't help a bit. Each night I wake up out of dreams on which I dare not think. And most dreadful of all, I am by degrees losing everything that I had gained spiritually. It is almost impossible for me any longer to concentrate my thoughts or to lull myself to sleep. Often I lie awake the whole night through. I shall not be able to bear that much longer. Finally, when I can carry on the struggle no further, when I give in and make myself impure again, then I shall be worse than all the others who have never struggled against it. You understand that, don't you? I nodded, but could say nothing to the point. He began to bore me, and I was horrified at myself, because his obvious need and despair made no deep impression on me. My only sentiment was, I can't help you. Then you know nothing that would help me? He asked at last, exhausted and sad. Nothing at all. There must be some way. How do you manage? I cannot tell you anything, knauer. People can't help one another in this case. No one has helped me either. You must think of something yourself, and you must obey the prompting which really comes from your own nature. There is nothing else. If you cannot find yourself, then you won't find any spirits either. Disappointed and suddenly become dumb, the little fellow looked at me. Then his look suddenly glowed with hate. He made a grimace at me and cried with rage, "Ah, you're a nice sort of saint. You have your vices well, I know. You pretend to wisdom, and secretly you stick in the same filth as I and all of us. You're swine, like myself. We are all swine." I went away and left him standing there. He made 2-3 steps in my direction, then he stopped, turning round and ran away. I felt sick from a feeling of pity and horror. I could not get rid of the feeling until I got home to my little room, and placing my few pictures before me, I surrendered myself up with passionate fervor to my dreams. My dreams came back at once, the dream of friend Doran Crest, of mother and the strange woman, and I saw the features of the woman so very clearly that I began to draw her picture the same evening. In a few days, this drawing was finished, painted in as if unconsciously in dreamy quarter-of-an-hour periods. In the evening I hung it on the wall, put the reading lamp in front of it, and stood before it as before a spirit with whom I had to fight until victory should be decided in one way or the other. It was a face similar to the former, resembling my friend Damien, in certain traits even resembling myself. One eye stood perceptibly higher than the other. The look passed over me, sunk in a staring gaze, full of destiny. I stood before it. Such was my inward exertion that I became cold to the marrow. I questioned the picture. I abused it. I caressed it. I prayed to it. I called it mother. I called it beloved. Called it stumped and whore. Called it Abraxas. Meanwhile, words of Pistorius crossed my mind, or of Damien. I could not recollect on what occasion they had been spoken, but I thought I heard them again. They were the words of Jacob wrestling with the angel of God. I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. The painted face in the lamplight changed at each appeal. It was bright and shining, was black and gloomy. It closed pale lids over dead eyes, opened them again and flashed a burning look. It was woman, man, girl, was a little child, an animal, vanished to a speak, was again tall and clear. At last, in response to a strong inward prompting, I closed my eyes and saw the picture inwardly in me, stronger and more powerful. I wished to kneel down before it, but it was so much within me that I could separate it from myself no more. It seemed as if it had entirely identified itself with me. Then I heard a loud, confused roar as of a spring storm. I trembled in an indescribably new feeling of fear and excitement. Stars darted before me and died out. Recollections even of the first forgotten years of my childhood, of a time further back still, of a pre-existence in the early stages of existence, pressed through me. But the recollections which seemed to piece together my life's whole history, even to its most secret details, did not cease with yesterday and today. They went further, mirrored the future, teared me away from today, changing me into new forms of life, of which the pictures were very bright and blinding. But of none of them could I recall it but just an image later. In the night, I woke up out of a deep sleep. I was dressed and lying transversely across the bed. I struck a light, feeling that I must try to remember something important that had happened. I knew nothing of the hours just past. I turned on the light, and recollection came back gradually. I looked for the picture. It was hanging on the table. It was not hanging on the table. Neither was it lying on the table. On the wall. Oh my god. Hold on. Let me restart that. It was not hanging on the wall. Neither was it lying on the table. I thought confusedly that I must have burned it. Or was it a dream, that I had burned it in my hands and had eaten the ashes? A great inquietude convulsed me and drove me forth. I put on my hat, went out of the house, and down the street, as if under coercion. I walked and walked through streets and squares as if blown along by a storm. I listened in front of the gloomy church of my friend, searched in obedience to a blind impulse, without knowing what I was looking for. I went through a suburb where brothels stood. Here and there a light was still shining. Further on stood new buildings and brick heaps, covered in part with gray snow. I went on through this wilderness, driven forward by a strange impulse, like a man walking in a dream. The thought of the new building in my native town crossed my mind, that building to which my tormentor Cromer had drawn me to settle accounts with him. In the gray night, a similar building stood there in front of me, its black doorway yawning wide. I was drawn towards it, but wanted to shun it and stumbled over sand and rubbish. The impulse was stronger than I had to go in. I staggered over planks and broken bricks into the deserted room. There was a moldy smell of damp, cold stones. A heap of sand lay there, a gray, bright speck, otherwise all else was dark. Okay. Drinkity drink drink. Full on, that was like 14 pages of like just full on reading. Kind of impressive. Suddenly, a terrified voice called to me. In God's name, Sinclair, where have you come from? And a human figure rose out of the darkness close to me, a little thin shape like a ghost. I recognized, while yet my hair was standing on end, my school companion knauer. How did you get here? He asked, as if mad with excitement. How have you been able to find me? I did not understand. I wasn't looking for you, I said, dazed. I spoke with difficulty. The words came from me painfully, as if from dead, heavy, frozen lips. You weren't looking for me. No, I was drawn here. Did you call me? You must have called, but what are you doing here? It's still night. He put his thin arms convulsively around me. Yes, night, but it must soon be morning. Oh, Sinclair, to think that you didn't forget me. Can you ever forgive me? What then? I was so hateful. Then I recollected our conversation. Had that taken place 4, 5 days ago? It seemed to me like a lifetime, but suddenly I knew all. Not only what had occurred between us, but also why I had come and what knauer wanted to do there. You wanted, then, to take your life, knauer. He shuddered through cold and fear. Yes, I wanted to. I don't know whether I could have. I wished to wait until the morning came. I drew him into the open. The first oblique rays of day glimmered indescribably cold through the gray atmosphere. I led the boy on my arm a little way. I heard my own voice saying, Now go home, and don't say anything to anybody. You are on a false track, and we are not swine, as you think. We are men. We make gods, and we wrestle with them, and they bless us. Silently we went on, and separated. When I came home, it was day. The best that mystery and Saint Blah had yet to give me was the hours with Pistorius at the organ or by the chimney fire. We read a Greek text about Abraxas together. He read to me portions of a translation of the Vita and taught me to say the sacred Om. However, it was not this learned instruction which was of service to my inner self, but rather the contrary. What did me good was the self-forgetting I made, the increasing confidence in my own dreams, thoughts, and pressentiments, and the consciousness of the power that I carried in me. I had an excellent understanding with Pistorius in every way. I needed only to think intently of him, and I could be sure that he, or a greeting from him, would come to me. I could ask him, just as I could Demian, something or other, without his being there in person. I needed only to imagine his presence and to put my questions to him as intensive thoughts. Then all the soul force I had put into the question came back to me as answer. Only, it was not the person of Pistorius which I called up in my imagination, nor that of Max Damian, but it was the picture I had painted and of which I had dreamed. It was the half-man, half-woman dream picture of my demon, to which I called it. It lived now not only in my dreams. It was no longer painted on paper, but it was in me, and a desired picture and an enhancement of my spiritual self. The relation into which the unsuccessful suicide knauer entered with me was peculiar and sometimes amusing. Since the night I had been sent to him, he dogged my steps like a faithful servant or hound, sought to attach himself to me and followed me blindly. He came to me with curious questions and wishes. He wanted to see spirits, to learn the Kabbalah, and he did not believe me when I assured him I understood nothing of all these things. He credited me with being able to do anything. But it was singular that he often came to me with his queer and silly questions just at the moment when I myself had a mental knot to be disentangled. His moody ideas and concerns often gave me the cue, the impulse, which helped me in the solution of my own problems. He was often tiresome, and I imperiously drove him away. I felt, however, that he had been sent to me, and what I gave to him I received twofold in return. He also was a guide, or rather a way. The mad books and publications he brought me, and in which he sought the key to happiness, taught me more than I realized at the time. This knauer vanished for later from my path, neither did I miss him. No arrangement, no understanding was necessary with him, but it was with Pistorius. Towards the close of my school career in St. Blah, I lived through another peculiar experience with my friend. Even innocuous, innocent people are not altogether spared the shock of a conflict. Even they come once in their lives in conflict with the beautiful virtues of piety and gratitude. Each must make the step which parts him from his father, from his teachers. Each must once feel something of the bitterness of loneliness, though most people cannot support it for long and soon creep back to their homes again. It was not a great struggle for me to part from my parents and their world, the bright world of my beautiful childhood, but slowly and almost imperceptibly I had gone further from them and become more of a stranger to them. I regretted it. It often caused me bitter hours during my visits home, but it was not deep. I could bear it. But when we have offered love and reverence of our own accord, and not out of habit, when we have been disciples and friends with our innermost feelings, then it is a bitter and terrible moment when the realization is suddenly brought home to us that the guiding current of our life is bearing us away from those we love. Then every thought of ours which rejects our friend and teacher enters our own heart like a poison sting. Every blow of self-defense strikes back into our own face. Then he who felt that dictates of his own conscience were an authentic guide reproaches himself with the terms faithlessness and ingratitude. Then the terrified heart flees anxiously back to the valleys of childhood virtues, and cannot believe that the rupture must take place, that another bond must be severed. In the course of time, a feeling had slowly developed in me which refused to recognize my friend Pistorius unconditionally as my guide. What I experienced in the most important moments of my youth was my friendship with him, his counsel, his consolation, his proximity. God had spoken to me through him. Through him, my dreams returned to me. From his mouth came their explanation. From him I learned their significance. He had given me the courage to realize myself. And now, alas, I felt a growing opposition against him. In his conversation, he evinced too clearly a desire to instruct me. I felt it was only one side of my nature that he thoroughly understood. There is no quarrel, no scene between us, no rupture. I said to him only a single, really harmless word, but nevertheless, it was the moment when an illusion between us fell in colored pieces. The presentiment had for some time already oppressed me, but one Sunday in his scholarly old room this presentiment changed to a definite feeling. We were lying on the floor before the fire. He was speaking of mysteries and religious forms which he was studying, and on which he was meditating. He occupied himself with trying to picture the possible future. To me, all this seemed curious and interesting, but scarcely of vital importance. It smacked of erudition. It was like a fatiguing search among the ruins of former worlds. And all at once I felt an aversion from the whole business, from this cult of mythology, from the sort of piecing together, this mosaic work of religious forms which had been handed down to posterity. Pistorius, I said suddenly, in a malicious outburst which surprised and frightened even myself. Relate a dream, a real dream, one that you have had in the night. What you have just been talking about is so cursedly antiquarian. He had never heard me speak thus. With shame and terror, I realized the very same moment that the arrow I had shot at him, and which had entered his heart, was taken from his own quiver. I realized that I had heard him reproach himself in an ironical tone on this very account, and that now I had maliciously turned one of his own reproaches against him like a resharpened arrow. He felt it instantly, and was silent. I looked at him with terror in my heart, and saw that he had become very pale. After a long, heavy pause, he put some wood on the fire and said quietly, "You are quite right, Sinclair. You are a wise fellow. I will spare you all this antiquarian business." He spoke very quietly, but his tone told me how deeply he had been wounded. What had I done? I was on the point of tears. I wanted to beg his pardon with all my heart, to assure him of my affection and gratitude. Moving words came into my mind, but I could not utter them. He was silent as well, and so we lay there, while the flames leaped up and then sank, and with each flame that paled, fell something beautiful and fervid that ceased to glow and had vanished, never again to come back. "I fear you have misunderstood me," I said at last, much crushed, and with a dry, hoarse voice. The silly, senseless words came as if mechanically from my lips, as if I had been reading them out of a news sheet. "I understood you perfectly," said Pistorius softly. "You were quite right." We waited. Then he continued slowly, "So far as one man can be right in his judgment of another." "No, no," a voice inside me said. "I am wrong." But I could not say anything. I knew that I had aimed my single little word at his one essential weakness. I had touched the point of which he himself was distrustful. His idea was antiquarian. He was a seeker, but retrogressive. He was romantic. And suddenly I realized that it was just what he had been to me and had given to me, that he could not be and give to himself. He had guided me to a point on the road, beyond which he, the guide, could not go. God knows how I could have uttered such a word. I had not meant it badly. I had had no idea that it would lead to a catastrophe. I had uttered something, the import of which I did not myself realize at the moment of utterance. I had surrendered myself to a somewhat witty, somewhat malicious inspiration, and fate used it as her instrument. I had been guilty of a little thoughtlessness, crudeness, and he had accepted it as a judgment. Oh, how I wished then that he would have got angry, have defended himself, have shouted at me. But he did nothing. I had all that to do within myself. He would have smiled had he been able. The fact that he could not showed me more than anything else how hard I had hit him. And because Pistorius took the blow from me, his presumptuous and ungrateful pupil, so quietly, because he silently agreed with me, because he recognized my word as a judgment of fate, he caused me to hate myself. He made my thoughtlessness seem 1,000 times greater than it was. As I struck, I had thought he had a strong man, capable of defending himself. Now he was a meek, suffering creature, defenseless, who surrendered in silence. We remained a long time lying before the dying fire, in which each glowing figure, each crumbling ash heap called to my memory, happy, beautiful, rich hours, making my guilt and my obligation to Pistorius greater and greater. Finally, I could bear it no longer. I got up and went. A long time I stood before his door. A long time I listened on the dark staircase. A long time I stood outside in front of the house, waiting to see whether perhaps he would come out to me. Then I went on, walking for hours and hours through town and suburbs, park and wood, until evening fell. At that moment, I felt for the first time the mark of Cain on my forehead. I fell to pondering and rumination. I had every intention in thinking matters over, to accuse myself and to defend Pistorius, but all ended to the contrary. 1,000 times I was ready to repent of my rash word and to withdraw it, but it had been true nevertheless. Hi, hello! Glitch? I don't know if I'm saying that right because there's a 2, but hello! We are partway through chapter 6 of Demian. So far it's mostly just been Sinclair ruminating on his religion, not gonna lie. But he saved a guy from suicide. He is currently, is Reddit quiet or am I tweaking? Am I quiet? Am I really quiet? Hold on. I can like increase the gain. Hold on. Filters. New room yay! Let's see. We can increase it by 3 decibels. I didn't say syllables this time. Yay! But yeah, sorry if I was quiet that whole time. If I'm ever having audio issues, if I'm ever too quiet, too loud, if anything is ever like off, feel free to tell me, please, because otherwise I will not know. Because I can't hear myself, I can't hear my voice in relation to the music. So yeah, just literally feel free to tell me anything whack about the audio. But it had been true, nevertheless. Now I succeeded in understanding Pistorius and building up his whole dream. This dream had been to be a priest, to proclaim a new religion, to invent new forms of exaltation, of love, of worship, to set up new symbols. But this was not within his province. He lingered too long in the past. He knew too much of what had been. He knew too much of Egypt, of India, of Mithras, of Abraxas. His love was attached to ideas with which the world was already familiar. And in his inmost self, he probably recognized that the new religion had to be different, that it had to spring from fresh sources and not be drawn out from collections in libraries. His office was, perhaps, to help men define themselves, as he had done with me. But to found a new doctrine, to give new gods to the world, was not his function in life. And at this point, the realization came upon me that everyone has an office, a charge, but to no one is it permitted to choose his office for himself and to discharge it as he likes. It was wrong to want new gods. It was entirely wrong to wish to give the world anything. A man has absolutely no other duty than this, to seek himself, to grope his own way forward, no matter whither it leads. That thought impressed itself deeply on me. That was the fruit of this new event for me. Often had I pictured the future. I had dreamed of filling roles which might be destined to me, as poet perhaps, or as prophet, as painter, or some such role. All that was of no account. I was not here to write, to preach, to paint. Neither I nor anyone else was here for that purpose. All that was secondary. The true vocation for everyone was only to attain to self-realization. He might end as poet or as madman, as prophet or as criminal. That was not his affair. That was of no consequence in the long run. His business was to work out his own destiny, not any destiny, but his own, to live for that, entirely and uninterruptedly. Everything else is merely an attempt to shun his fate, to fly back to the ideals of the masses, to adapt himself to circumstances. It was fear of his own inner being. There arose before me this new picture, terrible and sacred, suggested to me 100 times ere this, perhaps often already expressed, but now for the first time lived. I was a throw from nature's dice box, a projection into the unknown, perhaps into something new, perhaps into the void, and my sole vocation was to let this throw up from primeval depths work itself out in me, to feel its will in me and to make it mine. That solely. I had already known what it was to be very lonely. Now I felt I could be lonelier still, and that I could not escape from it. I made no attempt to reconcile myself with Pistorius. We remained friends, but our relation towards one another had changed. Only one single time did we mention it, or rather, it was only he who spoke of the matter. He said, "I want to be a priest. You know that. I would best of all like to be the priest of the religion of which we have so many presentiments. I can never be that, I know. I have known it already for some time, without fully admitting it. I will do some other priestly service, perhaps at the organ, perhaps in another way. But I must always be surrounded by something which I find beautiful and sacred. Organ music and mysteries, symbol and myth. I need that and cannot persuade myself to leave it. That is my weakness. I often realize, Sinclair, that I should not have such desires, that they are a luxury and a weakness. It would be greater, it would be more right, if I placed myself quite simply at the disposition of fate, without pretensions. That is the sole thing I cannot do. Perhaps you will some time be able to do it. It is hard. It is the only thing really hard there is, my friend. I have often dreamed of it, but I cannot do it. I tremble at the thought of it. I cannot stand so completely naked and alone. I am a poor, weak hound, who needs a little warmth and food, who occasionally likes to feel the proximity of his own kind. This is a long paragraph. Sorry. Oh my god, it just keeps going. How long are we to the end? We're quite close. This is gonna be a quick stream. Oh boy. He whose only desire is to work out his own destiny has no kith or kin, but stands alone and has only the cold world space around him. Do you know that as Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane? Is that right? I don't know. There have been martyrs who willingly let themselves be nailed to the cross, but even they were not heroes. They were not freed. They also wished for something to which they had been accustomed, to which they had loved, with which they had felt at home. They had examples or ideals. He who will fulfill his destiny has neither examples nor ideals. He has nothing dear to him, nothing to comfort him, and one really ought to go this way. People like you and I are certainly very lonely, but we still have each other. We have the secret satisfaction of being different, of revolting, of wanting the unusual, but we must drop that too if we would go the whole way. We must not wish to be revolutionaries, or examples, or martyrs, to think the thought is to its logical end. No, one could not think beyond that, but one could dream of it, could sense it, could anticipate it. A few times I realized something of this, in a very quiet hour. Then I looked straight into the open, staring eyes of my fate. They could have been full of wisdom, or full of madness. They could be full of love, or full of wickedness. It was all one. One was to choose nothing of all that. One was to want nothing. One was only to want oneself, one's destiny. And that way had Pistoria served me, for a time, as guide. In those days I walked about as if I were blind. Storms roared within me, every step meant danger. I was conscious of nothing but the precipitous darkness in front of me, down to which all the roads I had trodden hitherto seemed to lead. And in my inward self I saw the picture of the guide, who resembled Damien, and in whose eyes stood my fate. I wrote on a sheet of paper, "A guide has left me. I stand in complete darkness. I cannot take a step alone. Help me." I wished to send that to Damien, yet I omitted to do this, for each time I wished to do it, it seemed foolish and meaningless. But I knew that little prayer by heart, and often said it to myself. It accompanied me hourly. I began to realize what prayer is. My school career was over. My father had arranged that during the holidays I was to travel and then I was to go to the university. In which faculty, I knew not. I was to be allowed to take philosophy for one semester. I should have been equally content with anything else. Oh boy, that was a quicker stream than normal. We already hit chapter 7. I don't know if I want to do chapter 7 now. I mean, we very well could, but my voice is getting parched. And usually I do these streams one chapter at a time. So we'll do chapter 7 next week. I don't know, I guess we can fill these last 20 minutes with like just chatting. If anyone is up for that, but if not, then like, that's fine. We can save that for like the Irium stream later on tonight. Yeah. Hold on. I was like actually close to vomiting right now. Awkward. One day I'll be able to get over this like nausea spell that keeps like afflicting me, but it's fine. Now my throat tastes like acidic strawberries. Ew. It's kind of gross, not gonna lie, but it's okay. Anyways, if no one has anything else to say, I might just end stream now. I know it was a very, very short stream, probably the shortest one I've ever done, if you don't count all the times my like internet has like bugged out on me. But yeah, this is gonna be it for today. Let's see, what's next on the schedule? Today I'm gonna do an Irium stream detailing like my logistics for the event. I'm gonna probably do that around like 8:30 because my friend streams at like 12, so I can't stream at 12 anymore. What else? What was I gonna do? Right, schedule. The next schedule is going to be Nikkei, which is going to be on Wednesday, which I'm so excited for. I really hope, I've heard some really good things about the game. I've heard some really bad things about the game, but I've heard some like really good things about the game that kind of like make up for the bad things. So hopefully it turns out well. Hopefully it turns out great. And then Thursday we're gonna do the 100-line demo. The 100-line Last Defenses demo, which I'm excited. That's going to be here on YouTube. And then on Saturday, we're skipping Friday because I have an appointment. But on Saturday, we're going to be doing a Zatsudan stream, in which I talk about the future, which is like really spooky and really scary. And I'm definitely going to cry during it. But that's for future me to worry about. Current me is vibing. Yeah, are you doing good lately? I've been doing good for like the past 36 hours, I think. Maybe the past 48 hours really have been like good to me. The days leading up to that were like kind of awful, and I was like crying every day, but like recently I haven't like cried myself to sleep in like 2 nights, so I think that's pretty good. That still sounds really concerning though. But hey, it could be worse. It could be like a lot worse. Like I've experienced the worst, and let me just say, it could be a lot worse. So as far as I know, I'm like having a great time, you know? But like, yeah. I'll discuss more stuff on Saturday, but for now, we are in fact going to be ending stream. Again, I will see you guys on, what's it called? On Irium later tonight, if you guys have Irium. If you don't, then I am sorry. And yeah, I'm gonna go apply to jobs or like study or something, maybe read some books, maybe not do any of that and play Minecraft. So yeah, see you guys later. Bye bye.